My name is Chris Bennett. A changed character name. After a difficult period, feeling lost and tired of life, I decided I needed a big change. I sold most of my belongings, left my troubles behind, and started a long road trip by car across the United States. I didn't have a specific destination, I just wanted to drive, see the sights, and hope to find myself again on the open road. I am a rather introverted person, easily affected by my surroundings. Recent pressures and losses had made me more sensitive and anxious than usual. The trip took me through vast landscapes, sprawling deserts, majestic mountain ranges. During the day, the scenery was beautiful and gave me a sense of freedom. But at night, when driving on deserted roads, the isolation and darkness made me feel a little uneasy. It was a late summer night in 2022. I was driving on a remote stretch of highway in Arizona. Around me was only desert and darkness. There were no streetlights, only the faint light from my headlights shining ahead. The air was very still, with only the sound of the wind and the steady hum of my car engine. I had been driving for many hours. Feeling a bit tired, I tried to stay focused, looking straight ahead. In that moment, I had no idea that the open road I was on was about to intersect with something that did not belong to this world. And my journey to find myself was about to turn into a desperate escape from a ghost. I was driving on the deserted highway in Arizona. Around me was only desert and the starry night sky. The air grew colder as night fell completely. Suddenly, I felt an unusual cold draft in the car. It was bone-chilling, as if piercing my bones, even though the car doors were closed. At the same time, I felt as if someone else was in the car with me, or someone was watching me from outside. A shiver ran down my spine. I looked around. Nothing. I looked in the rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. Only the faint light from my headlights. I tried to be rational. It must just be fatigue, or the cold air of the desert night. I continued driving. Then, in the distance, in the light of my headlights, I saw a figure standing by the roadside. A person. I slowed down. Who would be standing here at this hour, in such a remote place? As I got closer, I realized it was the figure by the roadside of a young girl. She was wearing normal clothes, but they looked a bit old. Her long hair hung down. She stood there, not hitchhiking, just standing quietly, with her back to the road. I stopped the car a short distance away from her. Rolling down the car window, I called out, "Hey miss, do you need any help?" The girl slowly turned her head to look at me. Her face, abnormally pale, and her eyes, those eyes were deep black, hollow, lifeless, like two black holes staring straight at me. She didn't say a word, just stood there, looking straight at me with those deep black, hollow eyes. I froze. My entire body trembled. The unusual coldness from earlier now became much more intense. I could see something horrifying in those eyes. An ultimate suffering, an emptiness, and a little bit of terror. The girl still stood there, staring at me, and then, before my eyes, her figure gradually faded, as if dissolving into the thin air. In a moment, she was completely gone. I sat there, in my car, amidst the night and the silence of the desert. My heart pounded. My breath came in ragged gasps. I knew I had just encountered a ghost. The ghost from the highway. This truth sent shivers down my spine. And it completely changed my trip. After the terrifying encounter on the highway, I couldn't continue my trip normally anymore. The fear and haunting image of the pale face and hollow black eyes of the girl clung to me relentlessly. I no longer felt free or like I was finding myself. Now, I just wanted to find somewhere safe. rest, and try to forget what had happened. Initially, I didn't have a specific plan for where the trip would end. But I remembered that a distant relative had left me an old house in a small, remote town in New Mexico. It was a house I had never visited. I decided to drive there. Perhaps, the stillness and isolation of the place would help me calm down. I drove day and night, stopping only when necessary. Finally, after many hours of driving in tension and fear, I reached the small town in New Mexico and found the old house that my relative had left. The house was located at the edge of town, quite isolated, surrounded by empty lots and trees. From the outside, it looked normal, an old brick house, but it was clearly long unoccupied. Weeds grew wild, the paint was peeling. When I stepped into the house, I felt an old, cold atmosphere enveloping me. There was a smell of dust, old wood, and something hard to describe, like dry earth or sand. The light inside was very dim. Even during the day, uneasy destination, I had hoped this would be a place where I could find peace. But from the very first night in this house, I knew that the haunting from the highway had followed me. Small, strange noises began to appear. Creaking sounds upstairs when no one was there. The sound of a door gently opening, closing. A feeling as if someone was walking around in the house. And sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I heard a sound like metal hitting very faintly from outside, like the sound of a vehicle collision. I tried to be rational, telling myself it was just the noises of an old house, or sounds from outside the town. But the feeling of being watched was undeniable. I felt as if someone was in the house with me, and that feeling was very familiar. It felt exactly the same as when I stood facing the ghost girl on the highway. The haunting from the highway had truly followed me, all the way to this uneasy destination. And that's when the real nightmare began in this old house. The strange noises in the old house in New Mexico became more frequent and terrifying. The footsteps upstairs weren't just walking anymore. Sometimes they sounded like running or the sound of something heavy being dragged. The feeling of being watched was ever present, sending shivers down my spine even when doing the simplest things. I felt as if someone was standing right behind me, or watching me from a dark corner of the room. The unusual cold in certain areas of the house became apparent, bone-chillingly cold, as if something invisible was present there. And I started seeing fleeting shadows in the corner of my eye. Blurry, grayish figures, disappearing the moment I tried to look directly at them. These shadows often appeared at the end of the hallway, or near windows looking outside. The terrifying thing was that these phenomena seemed connected to my encounter on the highway. Sometimes, during the night, I heard sounds from outside the house. Not the wind, but sounding like sudden braking, loud metal crashing, then sounds of collapse, exactly like the sound of a car accident. Collision from the darkness. It echoed in the silence of the night, terrifying me completely. Then once, while standing at the end of the hallway, I suddenly saw a shadow flit by very quickly in the corner of my eye. And that shape seemed to be the shape of a girl. The haunting by the ghost girl from the highway became increasingly clear in this house. My dreams also changed. Instead of being vague, they became more detailed. I dreamed of driving on a deserted highway, with fog rolling in, and then, a terrible collision, and the image of a girl lying on the road, covered in blood, her eyes looking straight at me. I woke up in fear, my heart pounding. I knew she had followed me. The spirit of the ghost girl from the highway had latched onto me and followed me all the way to this old house. This house wasn't just simply old. Something about it attracted her, or allowed her to manifest. Perhaps this house also had a dark history of its own. I lived in constant worry and fear. There was no longer the peace I sought, only haunting and fleeting shadows in the darkness. The strange phenomena in the old house became more and more intense. The fleeting shadows were now clearer, and sometimes I felt as if I saw the pale, terrifying face of the ghost girl, even if only for a second. The sound of car collisions from the darkness outside the house echoed more frequently. Like a reenactment of the horrifying moment, I knew I needed to find out the truth, not just about the accident on the highway, but also about this house. Why did she follow me? Why did this house allow her to manifest so strongly? I started searching for information about that remote stretch of highway, about the accidents that happened there. I searched online news archives of neighboring counties, looked for public police reports, if available. At the same time, I also researched the history of this old house. Asking longtime local residents, they said very little about this house. Only that it had been empty for a long time after an unpleasant incident. Searching through old documents I found in the house. And then, the horrifying pieces gradually connected. About 15 years ago, within the time frame you requested, a tragic accident occurred on that very remote stretch of highway in Arizona where I saw the girl. A drunk driver lost control and hit a young girl who was walking by the side of the road. The girl died instantly at the scene. Her name was Sarah Miller. A changed name, a horrifying tragedy, a sudden, brutal death at the hands of a drunk driver. And what was even more terrifying, through old documents and vague accounts from local residents, I learned that this old house had some connection to that accident. Perhaps this was where Sarah used to live. Or perhaps the drunk driver lived here. Or perhaps this house had another dark history, related to death or loss, making it a magnet for tormented souls. Traces of tragedy. Both the road and this house bear the traces of tragedy. The spirit of Sarah Miller, the young girl who died tragically on the highway, had followed me. Perhaps she wanted to find justice, find someone to tell her story to, or simply was trapped, unable to find peace. And this house, with its dark history, became the ideal place for her to manifest strongly, to relive her pain. One night, I heard intense noises from downstairs. I went down to check. And in the dim light, I saw the blurry figure of Sarah. She stood in the middle of the room, her face showing pain. And then, the scene changed. I saw her lying on the floor, covered in blood, her deep black, hollow eyes looking straight at me. Exactly like in my dream. Exactly like the first time I saw her on the road. That was the climax. I had faced, though vaguely, the spirit of the ghost girl. In the very house I was staying in, facing Sarah's spirit, in this very old house, was the climax of the horror. I knew the truth. I knew the tragedy that had happened. And I knew that her spirit was trapped. And for some reason, she had latched onto me. I couldn't stay in that house for another second. Fear had completely paralyzed me. I quickly packed only the most essential things, leaving everything else behind. I just wanted to get out of that place. I drove away, leaving the small, remote town in New Mexico, leaving the old house. But unforgettable fear. The haunted road from the highway still followed me. Even when I was back home, thousands of miles away, the haunting continued. Dreams about Sarah, about the accident, about the old house, they recurred. I still felt the unusual coldness, the feeling of being watched, especially when alone on deserted roads. I don't know why she chose me. Perhaps my sensitivity and anxiety made me vulnerable. Perhaps She was simply looking for a witness. Someone who could know about her tragedy. I don't know if Sarah's spirit will ever find peace. I hope that one day she will find release. But I also know that sudden and violent deaths often leave spirits trapped. The haunted road is still there. The old house in New Mexico is still there. And Sarah's spirit, perhaps, still lingers between those two places. Or perhaps, has followed me forever. I cannot drive long distances alone at night anymore. Every time I see a figure by the side of the road, I shiver, afraid it is Sarah. My story is a warning. Be careful about the places you travel through, especially on deserted roads at night. You never know what tragedy has occurred there, and what spirits are still trapped, seeking to express their pain. If you enjoyed true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and mysterious locations, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.